Hi, good day! This is Miss LM and we're back again for another math video, and today we're going to talk about independent and dependent variables. So in this video, we're going to learn the definition of independent and dependent variables. Also, we're going to learn how to identify the independent and the dependent variables among the given situation and also given equation. So before that, let us have these few questions that will help us realize what independent and dependent variables are. So if you study hard, what will happen? Okay, so you may get high grades or you may have a passing score, right? If you spend much of your allowance, what will happen? So you may have no money at all or naubusan ka na ng pera, right? Then the last one, if you eat much, what will happen? So you may get fat, right? So in these three questions, what do you think is the independent variable and the dependent variable? These three questions, it shows the independent variables. It shows the cause. Kung ano yung ginawa natin, ano yung mangyayari. Yung mangyayari na yon is the dependent variable or the effect, okay? So in mathematics, we call this as independent and dependent variables. In science, we also call this as cause and effect. And in English, we also have the independent clause and the dependent clause. So, parang ganun din po yun. Okay? So, now let's proceed to more examples about independent and dependent variables. We are going to identify the independent and dependent variables of the following statements here. A painter must measure a room before deciding how much paint to buy. Which one is the independent and which one is the dependent variable? Again, when we say independent, ito yung cause, and then dependent, ito yung maging effect. So, alin nga ba dito yung dapat na mauna? A painter must measure a room or bibili muna tayo ng paint? The independent variable is that the measurement of the room. So, we have to measure the room first before we know the amount of paint to buy, okay? So, in other words, the amount of paint depends on the measurement of the room. Next, number 2. Ryujin buys K kilos of apples at 50 pesos per kilos. So, what will be the independent and dependent variable? So, for the independent variable, it is the number of kilos bought by Ryujin and it will affect the cost of the apples na babayaran niya. Once na bumili siya ng 10 kilo, marami na siyang babayaran. Pero kung 1 kilo lang, hanggang 50 pesos lang. So, the independent variable, again, ito yung unang mangyayari. It is the cost. So, ito yung kilo na bibilhin ni Ryujin. And then, for the dependent, ito yung result. Ito yung effect. So, mamahal ang babayaran niya. In other words, the cost of apples depends on the number of kilos bought. Number 3, the height of a candle decreases d centimeters for every hour it burns. So, what will be the independent and dependent variable? Cause and effect. The first thing to happen and then the dependent is the result. Okay? The independent variable is that the hour that the candle is burning. So, in other words, number of hours it burns. Then, for the dependent variable, syempre, kung mas matagal na kasindi yung kandila, mas iikli yung kandila. So, yung height po, yung dependent variable. Again, the height of the candles depends on the number of hour it burns. Number 4, a veterinarian must weigh an animal before determining the amount of medication. May clue word naman tayo, di ba? Before determining the amount of medication. So, for this example, the independent variable, this comes first before having the dependent variable. So, independent variable is that we have to know the weight of the animal before giving the amount of medication. So, the independent variable is the weight of the animal and the dependent variable is the amount of medication. In other words, the amount of medication depends on the weight of animal. Okay? Then the last one, we have here, a company charges 500 peso per hour to rent a jackhammer. So, same as nung kay Ryujin na pagbili ng apple. Ito naman, tungkol naman sa pag-rent ng jackhammer. What will be the independent and the dependent variables here? So, for the independent variables, it is the hour that the jackhammer was rented. And dependent variable is the cost of rent, the amount of rent na babayaran. So, the cost to rent a jackhammer depends on the length of the time it is rented. So, mas matagal tayong nag-rent ng jackhammer, mas mahal yung babayaran natin. That's what independent and dependent variables are. So, pag independent variables, this comes first. Ito yung cost. Then, the dependent variable, ito naman yung effect. So now, let's have the definition of the independent and dependent variables when it comes to mathematics. The independent variable is the variable that stands alone and it is the variable that happens first. So ito nga po yung cause, kaya siya yung una dapat nating makikita or siya yung unang nangyayari. Then, the independent variable is also the input or the domain. Syempre, kung ano yung ilalagay natin, kung ano yung input natin, makakaapekto siya dun sa ating dependent variable. So again, independent variable is the input or domain. And when we say domain in a relation, it is the set of all x values. So it usually is the x in the table or equation. So tandaan po, if we have the equation or the rule form of a relation, yung x po doon ay ang independent variable. Pag binago natin si x, automatically mababago si y. Kaya po siya yung independent variable. So another is that it affects the value of the dependent variable. Yun nga po, once nabaguhin natin yung value ng x, nababago na rin po yung value ng y. For the dependent variable, syempre, nakadepende siya sa ating independent variable. So the dependent variable depends on the independent variable and it is what happens second. So ito yung effect. Ito yung magiging result. And then, the dependent variable is the output or range. So, yun po yung ating y elements or y values relation. We also have here a helpful hint that there are several different ways to describe the variables in a function. So, independent variable, again, x values, domain, input, x, it is the cause. Ano po? Then, the dependent variable is the y values, range, output, f of x or function of x, or ito po yung ating effect. So now let's have few more examples. Okay? So we have here fill in the blanks with the correct information. First is the time and the salary. What will be the independent variable and the dependent variable? Again, independent ito yung cause, then magiging effect yung dependent variable, or independent variable is the input and then meron tayong output na dependent variable. Alin kaya sa time and sa salary yung dalawang yon? Okay? So for the independent variable, syempre that is the time. And then for the dependent variable, it is the salary. Kasi once na mas mahabang oras tayong nagtrabaho, may OT tayo, ibig sabihin, madadagdagan yung salary natin. Okay po? So next, the number of hours boiling and the amount of water left in the pot. Which one is the independent and the dependent variable? So for the independent variable, it is the number of hours the water is boiling. And kung matagal nagpapakulo ng tubig, mas maunti yung maiiwang tubig doon sa ating lalagyan. Kasi nag-evaporate po yung water, di po ba? So the independent variable again is the number of hours boiling and the dependent variable is the amount water left. Okay? Then number 3, a sailboat travels at an average speed of 17 miles per hour. So, yun yung ating speed. The total distance d that the sailboat travels is equal to the rate times the number of hours h. What will be the independent variable, the dependent variable, and the equation that we can form from these statements? Alin nga kaya? Yung distance ba magbabago pag nagbago yung hours na nagta-travel yung sailboat, or yung number of hours ba magbabago pag nagbago yung distance na tinatakbo? So which one is the independent and the dependent variable? For the independent variable, we have the number of hours that the sailboat travels, and the dependent variable is the total distance d that the sailboat travels. So kung matagal nagta-travel yung sailboat, so, it means magbabago yung distance na natatakbo niyan. Kung saglit lang, ay di mas malapit lang yung mararating ng ating sailboat. For the equation, nabanggit po na 17 miles per hour. So, kung magbabago si r, magbabago si distance. So, what we are going to do to the given 17 miles per hour and dito po sa ating hours ng pag-travel ng sailboat is we have to multiply the two. So, we have total distance is equals to 17 times h. Pag nag-travel ng 2 hours, so 17 miles times 2, so yun yung magiging distance. Kapag nag-travel ng 5 hours, 5 times 17, yung result po magiging total distance traveled by the sailboat. So, let's proceed to our example number 4. So here we have JK wants to buy some new clothes for school. Shirts S cost $9 and $75 each and pants P cost $12 and $50 each. Write an equation to represent the total cost T of JK's clothes. So from the problem, as you can see, we have here total cost, and total is a clue word for the dependent variable. Kasi pag sinabi nating total cost, ibig sabihin po, possible na magbago to, depende sa kung ano ang mga bibili natin. Madadagdagan ba yung shirts? Madadagdagan ba yung pants? Mababago po yung ating total cost. So again, the dependent variable is the total cost T, and the independent variable is the number of shirts and pants that JK will buy. Okay? So number of clothes, S and P is our independent variable, and then for the dependent variable is the total cost. Then for the equation, we have here T, or the total cost is equal to 9.75 S because that's the price of the shirt per piece. Then for the pants is 12 and 50 P po. We're going to multiply the price and then the number of clothes, then add it up. Magbabago po ang total cost natin. For the last example, we have here Charlotte reads for 30 minutes each day. Let T represent the total number of minutes she reads and D represents the number of days. Write an equation to represent this relationship and then complete the table to show Charlotte's reading for 1 week. So, which one is the independent and dependent variable? Then we have to create the equation according to the problem. So, ang pinag-uusapan dito ay total number of minutes she read and the number of days na nagbabasa siya. So, sabi ko nga sa inyo kanina, pag may nabasa kayong total na word, it means na andoon or yun yung ating dependent variable. Magbabago ang total, depende kung gaano kadaming araw nagbabasa si Charlotte. Okay? So, from the word total number of minutes she read, yun po yung ating dependent variable. For the independent variable, we have the number of days that Charlotte reads books. Okay? So, independent, number of days, and then dependent, total minutes read. Okay? And then for the equation, nabanggit po sa first statement natin that Charlotte reads for 30 minutes each day. So, 30 minutes daw ang ginugugol ni Charlotte sa pagbabasa kada araw. So, for the equation, dahil nga po ang total minutes ang mababago, so T is equals to 30 minutes per day. So, 30 multiply by the number of days na nagbabasa siya. So, 30D. For the equation, we have T is equals to 30D. And then, create a table for 1 week. So, 1 week is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 days. Okay? So, kapag isang araw lang nagbasa si Charlotte, meron siyang 30 minutes na naubos for reading. Then, for 2 days, 2 araw na siya nagbabasa. So, 2, multiply natin by 30. The answer is 60. So, parang nagsasubstitute po tayo dito ng value ng D. If D is 3, T is 90. If D is 4, 4 times 30, that's 120. So, that will be the total number of minutes read. And then, for the 5th day, 5 times 30 is 150. And then 6 times 30 is 180. And 7 times 30 is 210. So, kung hihingi naman sa inyo for 60 days, 100 days, so what you're going to do is just continue the table and then substitute the value of D, multiply it by 30. The result is the total minutes that Charlotte reads a book. So, that's what the independent and dependent variables are. Tandaan po, ang independent is yung cause. For the dependent variable, ito naman po yung effect. Ito yung mangyayari kapag ginawa natin yung independent variable or kapag may ginalaw tayo sa independent variable, automatically magbabago si dependent variable. So, for mathematics, independent variable are the input or the domain, while the dependent variables are the range or the outcome. So, that's all for this video. I hope you learned something and huwag kalimutang mag-subscribe, mag-like, mag-share ng video, and take care always. God bless. Bye-bye!